Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1930 WAR5 project. And today I'm in the middle of the draft, and I just kind of wanted to having a blast doing this, folks. Gotta tell you, having an absolute blast with this draft. A bunch of players who, of course, I don't know. They're from 1930, and they have all sorts of values associated with them. And then again, this is a long project. Nothing's going to get finished today or started today. There's no dice being rolled today. We're simply moving players around from 1930. And what's always so great is I always identify the amount of cards that Strat-O-Matic produces in any season. And so in the 1930 set for the league of 16 teams, they produced 383 cards, which is a great number. Well, 384 is a better number, so I wrote in a 384th player, a nameless card, and I found some stats for a comparable player of the players in this era, and assigned him to the missing team, which was the Yankees. Strat-O-Matic only gave the Yankees 3 extra players instead of 4, so there we go. So now we have 384. And again, I've been following the previous league and leagues, 32-team leagues, what I like to do. So you can get 12 players per team as a foundation for I can't even call it a carryover league, folks. Let's face it. You can't carry over if you're decades apart from the next league. So we're going 1930, and then from there we're going 1956, then we're going 1961. A little bit of carryover there, of course. But we're moving players from different eras. Some might call this Hall of Fame. I don't like to look at that, because usually when you get Hall of Fame sets playing against each other, the Hall of Fame hitters often get humbled by the pitching, and the Hall of Fame pitchers get blown out by the hitting. And everybody's sort of mediocre when you play against each other in that form. So, in any event, 384 Strat cards, 12 players per team, and it's really easy to draft here. As you can tell here, above this line on the sheet for draftable players here, I got all the teams. And the D column is the WAR5 monetary amount. So it takes WAR. Let's take a look at Jimmy Fox. Jimmy Fox's WAR number is 6.9. So his WAR5 number is $34.50. We also decided that we got really robust with the amount of money we were going to allow these traditional teams to spend. The 2592 is the total WAR, $2,592. That's here. It's actually been shrunk now because I've been drafting, but originally it was $2,592. That means if you have 32 teams, you want to spend an average of $81. But you can manipulate that amount because again, 16 teams in reality, and then there's 16 more teams in the 1960 expansions, plural, 3 times. The American League in 61, National League in 62, and both leagues in 69. Those 8 teams. And then in 77, Seattle and Toronto, plus 6 more expansion teams I created. So it split 16-16. So you can add from $81. I've increased the pocketbook to $112 while subtracting for the this 1960 expansions. Their allowance is $56 to build a team, and $44 for the truly fictional teams beyond that. So that's the money amounts. If you go to the war draft room, we have the allowances here. The other thing is we are allowing at this point a Hall of Fame exemption or MVP exemption If a player is having if he's in a Hall of Fame or or has been an MVP or has had a year, one of his greatest years of his career, that team could cash in a $25 exemption. Just taken through so far, the way to look at this column is the team drafting, 12 players. This is if you cash in the exemption. The amount just sits there like that. If you want to take it, you add it right there. Boston did not use it because none of their players were that expensive. Milt Gaston does not qualify. He's $26.50, but he doesn't qualify for he's 17th on the MVP list. I cut it off prior to that, so he doesn't qualify. The White Sox do get an exemption for Carl Reynolds, who hit 359, 973 OPS. Carl Reynolds gets the exemption. So he was $31.50. But they were able to add a $31.50, an $8 player, a $22 player, and a $26.50 player. Only spent $63. So they indicate the player they take the exemption for there. I've done a lot of drafting. Detroit just drafted. Their first pick was Charlie Gehringer at $33. Fourth on the MVP list, a 1 second baseman who hits 330, 19 home runs. So he got an exemption. So they took him. George Yuli, a $31 pitcher. You can't use a second exemption. Particularly Yuli's not on the MVP list. But Yuli actually has an ERA under 4, which is remarkable in this era. Marty McManus, a slick fielder, and Earl Whitehill. So right now, I'm on Cleveland. So I thought I would do this live. I thought I would kind of go through this process and doing it live as how I do it. You see, I just did Detroit, and this is on how they finished, reverse order. So Boston went first with the worst record in baseball. Detroit was a little worse than Cleveland in the American League. So this row was where Charlie Gehringer was, the other hitter was there, and the two pitchers were here and here. So you just cut from this list, which is going to shrink the WAR money availability players, and you just paste them over into the sheet for the corresponding selection. Because we have 12 hitters, right? Because we want 12 players, I put the hitters at the top, and I have the pitchers at the bottom going up. So they'll meet in the middle somewhere. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 6 hitters and 6 pitchers, 7 and 5, 8 and 4. It doesn't matter. You just want to draft talent, with the allowance you have. So let's go to Cleveland now. I'm just opening this up really for the first time. I've sorted the cards, obviously, but I haven't really done any analysis with them. We know Johnny Houdap is the best hitter on the team. They have 12 hitters. They have 3 extra players. You get some value sometimes out of these extra players because their WAR value is going to be low because they didn't play a lot. However, statistically, on a short sample, they might have good stats. Pitchers here, 8 of them, and then 1 really bad extra pitcher. So what jumps off the page right here is Wes Farrell. My goodness. A 25-game winner, a $40 WAR, one of the highest WARs in the whole league, 296 innings. I'm going to go look at the card. I have the cards in front of me, and that's sort of the confirmation. Make sure what I see on the card is, okay. So, starter 9. Can't flash these cards up right now. I don't have them copied or printed or photographed, I should say. But Wes Farrell gets the exemption, so we are going to make him a player. It doesn't matter the order these guys go in, 1, 2, 3, or 4, as long as you just take your 4 guys. So I paste him there. So with $112 to spend, they spent $40 and they have $72 left. However, we're going to kick in the MVP exemption list. He's on the MVP list for Wes Farrell. And so now they've only spent $15 and they have $97 left. That's how that works. Also, just a reminder of the draft order. The rules are the 16 teams take 4 players. Then the 1960s expansion take 4. Then these 16 teams take another 4 players. The 1970s expansions take 4. And then we go back to the 16, taking 2, and it alternates again. So I'm really heavily leaning to these traditional 1930 teams getting a nice chunk of their guys. And for the 60 expansion and the 70 expansion, to be on the leaner side. And I'm fine with that, because once we get in later in the 20th century, you know, once the California Angels, the Twins, the Astros, the Mets, once all those teams begin to exist, they'll get more of their players who have better quality stats. So let's move back to Cleveland for a moment. And they have their big ace, Wes Farrell, on the clock. Now, immediate reaction is, when you save money like that, you want to spend money. So I'm looking at the offense. Hodap is the $24 player you can't get an exemption on. He's kind of in the... So you hope you get value out of him, and you do. He's a .354 hitter. He's a second baseman who's a 2. I'm doing the eyeball test. He's got full-time power. Oh, yeah. Yeah, .354 hitters, 51 doubles. Johnny Hodap will be the first hitter. So you just cut there, put him here. All right, next up, 2 more selections. Now, Ed Morgan is $29. He's 7th on the MVP list, but you've already used your exemption. I could use 2 exemptions if I had 2 $40 players. Like, the practicality is I will use that for Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Probably the only instance I will do that, give the Yankees 2 exemptions, because they have 2 extremely expensive players who I just cannot separate. This seems terribly a bad idea to not have them be teammates. So I'm going to have to use a double exemption, take the 25 twice. I'm kind of looking right now at Dick Porter at 16.5, comparing him to Ed Morgan, who's $29. So, same batting average, but Ed Morgan has a lot of power. He's got 26 home runs. He's a 2E23 at first. Dick Porter's a 3E11 in right field. Sure, Morgan would be better. He's also more expensive. He just spent a lot of money on 2 players, though. I got Earl Averil's a 1 in center field. That is going to, and Earl's, he's $20.50. All right, one of these guys would be a nice thing to have. Is there another pitcher? And this is so hard, folks. Look at these ERAs here. Second best pitcher is 4.02, which is glamorous. And then it goes into the 5s, 7s, and 6s. One option is to go and take a really lousy pitcher like this guy's stats, 7.13 ERA, just to save $7.50. That's a tax credit, you could say. You get a refund. He's negative $7.50, indicated in red. So that way, if you take this guy, you can go get an expensive player up there. I'm looking at Wes Farrell again. Yeah, he can pitch on 3 days rest. These other pitchers, 2 of these guys can pitch on 3 days rest, but is it really worth it? No. And the cheap pitchers, they're not worth it either. So none of these pitchers with positive WAR value are really worth spending money on at this point. At least when you're still building talent. So Jake Miller at minus $7.50 would be good, so that can get Earl Morgan. Or I could go Dick Porter and Earl Averill, or I could look in the next cluster. Let me look at the next cluster, beginning with Falk. Falk can't really field. I also want to diversify my position groups. I like to have a catcher first base group. I like to have second, third, and short group, and the outfield group. I like to have players from multiple groups. Johnny Hodap is a starting second baseman, so that's my middle infield. So I'm looking for an outfielder or a great catcher. Dick Porter is that outfielder. Earl Averill is a great defensive outfielder. Earl Averill hits .339, and he's $20.50. Okay. Johnny Burnett's a left-handed third baseman, hitting .312. Glenn Myatt's a catcher, but he's got a +2 arm. Joe Sewell's another third baseman. Bob Seed's a corner outfielder. The averages are going down, of course. Bob Seeds is actually... That's a decent value here. So, you see this guy's got negative WAR here. Bob Seeds. He's a .285 hitting outfielder, folks, who's a 2 in the outfield. He's got full-time power. This is how you can kind of game the system when using WAR. So, only 277 at-bats. So the less you play, the lower your WAR will be. We got a catcher who's a 1 with a 0 arm, Luke Sewell, hitting .257. We got a 2 shortstop. We already have a 2 second baseman, Johnny Goldman, but he's .242. Okay. And all the 3 extra players, nothing really special there. There's a .279 hitter, and then the next 2 guys aren't really glamorous. Yeah. Okay. I think I should go with Eddie Morgan, though. He's in a different position group from Johnny Hodap. I know he's expensive, but .349 hitters with 26 homers. Yeah, I'm going to go Eddie Morgan. I know he's the most expensive here, which isn't good. I'm not going to give this team a second exemption for that, unfortunately. So they got 1. Again, they're not in the class of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, so they're not going to get a second exemption. So with 3 players and an exemption, right? Remember, Farrell used to be $40. They've actually spent 54. They spent $94 on 3 players, and they only have 112 to spend. So with the exemption, they've spent $68. They have $44 left. This might be a time to use some creative math and get some negative WAR on this team. Let me look at this Jake Miller card to see if he ultimately might play in a league as a lefty who gets lefties out. And the answer is, heck no. He can't get anybody out. He's awful, as the -7.5 WAR indicates. How about Milt Schaffner, another lefty? Whew. Whew. I don't know what these guys were throwing in 1930, but they just, were they throwing slow pitch softball? I mean, it is terrible. All right, let's go. I think I'm just going to go for it with this team. This might be the first expensive team. I'm going to go Dick Porter versus Earl Averill, as Dick Porter hits .350. Actually, no, Earl Averill. Oh, he costs more money. That's what it is. No, I'm going to Earl Averill. Actually, he's also a left-handed bat. The other guys are not. I am really spending Cleveland's money like it's mine. So I'm going Earl Averill here, $20.50. But he's a .339 hitting, 1-1 in center field, a full-time lefty with power both ways. So they are putting a glorious team together. But they are going to run out of cash quick. So they have $23.50 left to get 8 players. So they're going to get a bunch of these, and they're in their own system. They could, in the next round, they could just take all this slop and just have one of the worst pitching staffs in the sport, or at least in this. This isn't the great Cleveland pitching staffs of the 1950s and 60s. Those Cleveland teams could pitch. This era, no. Nobody can really pitch. So I'm not worried about Cleveland having lousy pitching. But I like those players. They got a top pitcher in Wes Farrell to get you an exemption, so you could load up with the 3 hitters. That's how it played out. See, all the hitters weren't going to get you the $25 exemption because they were near $25. But Farrell got you it as a pitcher in a kind of opposite logic, because the pitching is generally horrible in this league. But Farrell is deemed at one of the top pitchers in this. So Cleveland got themselves a first baseman, that satisfies that group, a second baseman, that's middle infield, and an outfielder. They all can field. Eddie Morgan's a 2, Hoodap's a 2, Averill is a 1. They're all hitting .339 or better. I love it. I think it's great. They've spent, that's what they got left, $23.50. The teams, Detroit's got $38.50. The Baltimore Orioles / St. Louis Browns, $59.50 left. The White Sox have $49 left. And the Red Sox, they're floating with money. They got $66 left. You know why? They don't got any talent. They don't got anybody who cost anything. So they're going to have to start plucking guys at the end of the draft. And it's quite possible that they'll have money left over. So that's it. We're going to pause it right here. I just want to kind of show you the process that I'm going through. And we'll keep, I think Sundays we'll do progress reports on this WAR5 draft and post those on Sundays moving forward. So I hope you enjoy this little side project I put together. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you next time.